Hey there, audio listeners.
I'm Kyra.
And I'm Billy.
And we're coming to you from Pennsylvania College of Art and Design in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Welcome to our podcast, Into the Darkroom, where we take guests onto our show and interview them about their work, backstories, and any other useful information that you might not necessarily know about them.
Thanks for listening.
Imara Moore is a photographer and video artist from Staten Island, New York. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Film and Media Arts from the Temple University and a Master of Arts in Media Studies from the New School. She also has a Master's of Professional Studies from the School of Visual Arts in Digital Photography. As said on her website, Moore fervently believes in the power of visual arts to connect with people in a meaningful way. Her fine art photography is rooted in her personal experiences and is connected to her faith in emotional conscious and location. She has passed her years of powerful knowledge onto so many people, including myself, and I'm so excited to have her on our podcast today. Welcome, Imara.
Hey, Kyra.
Hello.
It's so nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you. So our first question for you is, how did you start creating, and when did photography and video first interest you?
So in the third grade, I
It goes
won.
all the way back.
It goes all the way back. I won a coloring contest. And it was a big deal. Like, people say, it's not too much, but third grade, the teacher was like, whoever wins the coloring contest, the gift was a disposable camera. And that was, I won the contest, so I felt like an artist. And then I won the camera, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And my mother has a BFA from City College.
That's awesome.
In New York. I mean, she worked at the Museum of Natural History for a number of years and then went into social work.
Wow.
And my father worked in a photo lab studio. So they did a lot of printing of headshots and stuff for people. So he used to come home with headshots of all these famous people. And then I have all these baby pictures because he liked photography as well. So
Yeah.
that's where I started creatively.
That's really cool. So what about video? When did you get into video?
So when I was in high school, I went to a high school where you had to declare a major. And I declared my major, and I was a psychology major. And I think it was after my junior year, I took a psychology of the brain class. And it gave me a headache. And I was like, I'm not sure that this is what I want to do.
It's a little too much.
And there was this program where they took students and we did workshops on Saturdays, and we were able to make videos. And so I participated in it, and it was you kind of had these mentor group relationships, and my mentor was, I think she was a producer in the industry. And so we discussed, I had to write a script and, direct people. It was bad. It was really, really bad. But it screened in their festival. And I was like, if I'm going to have to do something for the rest of my life, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I decided on film then.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's you want to be happy doing something the rest of your life.
That was the only thing I was interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Describe your most memorable moment in grad school.
Oh, that's a question.
Or a few, any in the top rank.
So my two graduate school experiences were a little different because the first one, the master's from the New School, was sort of the traditional MA program, and it took me about 3 years to finish. And it wasn't a cohort, so everybody didn't move together, but for the most part, those of us who went part-time went together. And it was there that I did a lot of 16 millimeter shooting. And I guess a memorable moment for me then was, putting in my thesis proposal, because the New School is a very, it's a liberal program, but it's very theory heavy.
Yeah.
And so when I proposed doing a film for my thesis, it was met with a little bit of resistance, just because I don't think they had a real structure for people doing projects like that. But I proposed, and it was just modified so that I was able to do my film, but I also had to write a regular thesis paper. So I ended up having to do 2 times the work
Double, yeah.
of everybody. But I did it. and it was amazing. And I'll never forget. My thesis advisor was a teacher there, and she let me screen it in her class. And it was the varied reactions that really tied it all together for me, because I think in my undergraduate program, you learn the techniques and you learn about, what makes a good production. But it was there that I really understood why people connect with images. And so that was really significant for me.
Especially moving images, too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was a female-centered project.
Awesome.
So which showed me. And so the response around the room was crazy. Some people loved it, and some people were like, it wasn't for me. And,
I was going to ask if you got any, pushback for that being female-centered.
Most of the men in the class gave some pushback.
Yeah.
And subsequently, it became a large part of my thesis paper because I wrote the audience response and really looked a lot into Laura Mulvey's gaze theory, where how we become objectified and what that really means, and everybody just sort of fell in line with what theories already existed. So that was cool.
That's kind of how it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
What is one lesson you learned working in the field that you wish someone had taught you previously?
One lesson that I had to learn sort of on my own in the field.
The one that made me, when I was writing this question, I thought about when you told us about when you got to work on, I think, Good Morning America?
Oh, no, ABC.
ABC.
Oh, gosh, that was so stressful. When I finished undergraduate school at Temple, I came out, and editing was really a strong point of mine. I love to edit, and I edited fast. I was a keyboard editor. And so I ended up finding this community of editors in New York City. And, I even went to, a gathering, and it was just really cool. And so I got the opportunity to do an editing job for ABC, which of course was last minute because it's we don't have anybody, call this person. And they called me, and I'll never forget, I took a cab. I didn't remember where I took a cab from, but I'm in the cab oh my goodness, because I had to use Avid, and I knew I was going to use Avid. And I got there, and I was just so stressed, and the producer was just right over my shoulder. I'm sure he was like, I want to make sure that you know what you're doing before I give you this footage. And,
right.
And I froze, and he was and he had to show me how to do something. And then I was like, yeah. Once I remembered it, it all came back.
Right, of course.
He went away, and it was fine, but they never called me back.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know that somebody could have taught me something beforehand to prepare me for that experience, but I definitely learned and understood that you have to value every opportunity,
Yeah.
because if it had gone smoothly, it would have changed the whole trajectory of where I was going and what I was doing. So that was significant. Yeah.
Will you speak about your time developing curriculum for adolescents?
That's so funny. So also, after I graduated from Temple, I got a job as a grant coordinator for this, well, what would you consider it? It was sort of a resource for social workers. My mom was a social worker, and she had these connections. And they had just gotten a grant to do a digital video program for youth that were in foster homes or in shelters or I forget what you call it, but. And so they hired me for my film experience because they wanted me to come in and do the film aspect of this program. But in order for me to stay around long enough for them to get the grant money, I had to take this job. And so I took this job, and so I was able to deal with their grants coordination and then write basically write a curriculum helping young people who had never done any real video learn how to do video, and then teach it to them and have them come out with a product that was sort of therapeutic in a way. So it wasn't necessarily an art therapy grant, but it was the first time that I was able to use my video skills in a way that really was meaningful to the people that were receiving it. And so I wrote the curriculum out with all the goals. I was able to purchase all the equipment, and I facilitated the workshops, and some of them did, pretty good stuff. So it was really rewarding.
Sounds really impactful. Yeah.
You think. It's so funny when you do things, sometimes you feel like, oh, this is a major thing. And sometimes it's just something you do every day, and you don't realize that sometimes people walk away from it with a lot of something.
That'll probably stick with them
Yeah.
going forward.
Exactly.
Those small moments, there's so many small moments I remember from being in high school elementary school that really stuck with me, and it was just from an influence from a teacher or a friend or something.
Yeah. Exactly.
Definitely. So with that, what similarities do you notice between teaching children and senior citizens?
Oh my gosh, they're the same. It's the same people. Oh my goodness. So the youngest I've taught is preschool.
Okay.
And that's really interesting because really the goal of teaching preschoolers is with photography is okay, don't drop the camera. This is how you press the button.
Yeah.
This is how you look at the pictures. And with seniors, my oldest student is 93.
Oh my gosh.
And it's kind of the same thing. Okay, pushing her out of her comfort zone is so hard.
Yeah.
Because I think there's this really negative perception that as you get older, you're not capable of learning new things. And now it's she came up at a time where photography was all analog. Mm-hmm. And she loved her retina reflex camera, and that's what she knew. And so she kind of sometimes the seniors have the same sort of meltdowns that the preschoolers have.
Yeah.
No, who changed the setting? Yeah. What is happening on my camera? I'm it's just in burst mode. What does that mean? Take it off, please.
A sense of panic immediately.
A sense of immediate panic
Yeah.
that you're going to lose it and you're never going to get it again.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's really no, it's okay. It's okay to be wrong. We're in class so you can practice.
Right.
So that when you leave class, you don't freak out because
Right.
because you see this on the screen now.
Right.
So that's a similarity.
What do they typically like to capture?
The seniors?
And the preschoolers, too.
Preschoolers love to capture anything blurry because they're constantly moving. So there's nothing there's no, when we get a really in focus picture,
Yeah.
that's mind blowing.
The gold star of the class.
It's the gold star. So we go for abstractions.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the colors. Look at the flower that's moving.
The way
in
the
the
light
wind.
moves across
Exactly.
the screen. Yeah.
But with the seniors, I have enjoyed teaching them so much because they come with life.
Yeah.
A
A lot of experience.
So one of my students was a fashion illustrator for 30 years.
Wow.
One of my students was a nurse for 30 years. So they come with these perspectives and insights. And what I do is, again, the focus of that really is also to help them learn how to use the technology. So they could say whatever it is that they want to say. We do a lot of portraiture and things like that. But they like to photograph anything that means something to them. Oh my goodness, your hair is so beautiful. I want to stop. Can I take your picture? Oh, your shirt, it's so yellow. It's they really observe the world and they're oh, that would make a good picture. And that's why I want to take it. It may not turn out how I want, but there was something there and I tried to capture it.
And it meant something.
And
to
it
them.
meant something.
And in the spectrum of their experiences that.
Yeah.
Is really powerful.
Yeah. Also because we do class critiques,
Yeah.
And so then everybody gets to sort of comment and share on what they see, and you hear it, oh my, that perspective is great. Why? Because I know about perspective because I was painting for years, and now I'm just transferring that knowledge to photography. Or, oh man, that picture would just be perfect if it had a little red boat.
Yeah.
What that means,
Yeah.
we see the vision, so that's amazing too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, will you talk about your personal work?
Oh.
I'm really interested in your personal work, even just that little blurb earlier.
Yeah. Well, my video work is I do many less videos than I do photographs.
Okay.
Because at the foundation of my belief is it has to really mean something for me.
Yeah.
I had a gallerist say something to me one day, and it wasn't about me. Like, we were just in conversation at some event, and she said, I hate when photographers ask me, like, well, what should I be shooting? And she's like, if I have to tell you what to shoot, then what's the point of you shooting it? And so I've always believed that I have to feel inspired, and there is like a, so many things have been done. I need to make sure that my voice, what I'm saying, is uniquely what I'm saying. So most of what I do has come from my experience. So the thesis 16 millimeter film that I did at the New School, that was about an experience I had with the penal justice system, and finding out that when I thought I was just this like really innocent, awesome human being, and it turned out I fit every statistic that was out there and every stereotype for the situation that I was in, and that blew my mind. And then I went on, and my thesis for my digital photography program, which degree, which was, all photography, was the year I was in school. It was a 1-year intensive MPS program, Masters of Professional Studies, and it was so hard. Like, it was crazy. I was working full time, doing this program full time.
Oh my gosh. When did you sleep?
I don't know that I did. And about 2 months into the program, my father died.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it was from a stroke, so it wasn't like he was sick, and
completely unexpected.
Completely unexpected, totally rocked my world. And I had to function. And, I chose to put sort of myself into the art. And I came out with a project where I would go to cemeteries and photograph trees, because I happened to go to a lot of funerals, and I just noticed how a cemetery is one of the few places where you'll find like a solo tree. Usually trees are in bunches, but in cemeteries they're not. And so I was able to sort of communicate the loneliness of my emotional state through these trees. And so I do a lot of things like that. Like, when it's relevant to me, and when I feel like I have a strong enough voice to really want to say something, then I will put it a lot into my work. I actually have an exhibit coming up on Saturday.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Where is it at?
It's in Staten Island.
Awesome.
And it's going to be at the main library there. They'll be up for like a month. And it is a project that I received a grant for to do, where I'm combining pictures of people who are currently living with their ancestors. So I first did this project a few years ago, and I submitted it for a group show that I got into. And it was a picture of me and my grandmother. And it was the grandmother that I had never met, my father's mother.
Wow.
And it was significant to me because at my wedding, when my father was maybe in his late 50s, he cried. And he cried because he said he wished his mother was able to be there to see me getting married. His mother died when he was 8 years old, though. So I never experienced her. He hadn't experienced her in years, and yet he had such a connection to her. And because he was interested in photography, like, I had some pictures of that part of my family. And so sort of by association, I became very connected to her. And she became a curious figure to me, like this woman whose DNA I share, that I never got a chance to meet, but without whom I would not be here. And so I took a portrait of myself and a portrait of her, and in Photoshop I merged them together to create sort of this new being.
Wow.
That represented she and I. And when I did it, it was amazing how much I looked like her.
Yeah.
Like, I was shocked. I was like, I didn't really think that I looked that much like her.
Yeah.
But I did. And so I wrote a grant so that I could do it for other people. So I've been shooting for the past year, different people.
That is so cool.
with their ancestors and creating these portraits of people together. And so that's going to be up Saturday until December in Staten Island.
That is so amazing. That's so cool.
So I think a lot of my projects is just that. It sort of has to, they come from my heart. They come from what I feel like is something that needs to be said in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful because
Yeah.
there's, like it said, that there's no new idea. That
Yeah.
So, especially in photography and art, like everything has already been made,
Yeah.
everything has already been shot. But it's so different when you put your own spin on it and your experience, and the people around you can connect to it or they can't. It doesn't matter because it's yours.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, in my family, and because of the history of, African Americans in this country, having pictures of people from before is like gold.
Yeah.
We just don't have it.
Right.
It doesn't exist. And so the fact that I had this picture, I was like, I want to make sure I keep this. It's so significant.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure that part of, because the genealogical conversation right now is huge. You have all these ancestry kits and people are finding out where they're from, right? These websites, you can do your whole family tree. There's on PBS, there's Finding Your Roots, like where they do famous people's histories and they go back. So like you said, the topic is very popular right now.
Right.
This is just my voice in the middle of it.
Which is so powerful. Really cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today and speaking with me.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
I'm excited to edit this and let other people hear
your life,
your life, your experience.
Me too.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.